never give up. I never give up. I never give up. Turn around.
Hi guys, welcome back to Neff Inspiration, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stephan Neff. Today I've got Laura Moulton with me. And when I read about Laura, I was immediately attracted to the topic that she is passionate about, which is grieving the living. I'm currently going through a divorce. I am transiting from being an anesthetist to a functional medicine specialist. My children have left the house. So in theory, there was no death. Yet the amount of grief and loss that I've experienced in the last 18 months is actually brutal. And it was not clear to me until someone actually asked me, well, with your divorce, how are you grieving? And I said, I'm not grieving. What do you mean? In reality, I was denying myself the benefits of grieving well and grieving hard. And that's what I want to talk with Laura today about, because so many of us are in a similar situation. Laura, welcome to my show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Wow. Most of us are not aware that there is a lot of grief and loss. And often culturally, we are not even taught how to properly grieve in times of death. Nowadays, increasingly, people do die in the hospital. Children might not get the opportunity to say goodbye, or then thereafter being led in a healthy way of grieving. And certainly going back in time, when I was younger, I was never taught that. Were you in a different situation, or how did you focus now on such a topic? It's certainly not the greatest thing how to start a discussion on a cocktail party. What you do? Oh, I go into grief. Brilliant. Great. Let me just get some more canapes.
Yeah, I am one of those people who had to grow up very fast. So, learning how to be the most adultiest adult I know at a very young age was something I learned very quickly. And as your brain starts developing and realizing the environment in which you're a part of, because of course you don't know different when you're in it, and then you're like, oh, other people don't deal with that. Like other people don't struggle. Oh, that's so weird. Like it really just solidified to me how much people don't actually choose us or don't actually think that we are worth the investment that we wish we were to them. And that forces a sense of grief. And one of the things that I've constantly run into with the people that I work with is they will sacrifice so much of who they are, and they will put their heart and soul into someone that they need to love them so well, and they just won't. So they will people please and do anything they can to get them to love them and show up for them and be there and support them. And these people are saying no over and over in all these different ways. And we just don't want to let go. And that was what really drove me into this work, is how much people were sacrificing their souls for people who were telling them no. And they weren't able to live out their dreams, and they weren't able to live out the things that they wish that they could do, and they weren't able to function in the ways that they wanted to in their life, and they couldn't figure out why. And the root is, I think a lot of us have a very difficult time respecting the decisions that people have already made about us, which is how I define boundaries.
Very nice. Wow. Okay. That's of course very true. And what you're really talking about is attachment styles and the core beliefs that we lay down in very early in our lives, between age of 2 and 10 thereabouts, and often earlier. So here you have learned very quickly that people pleasing and the kind of more extreme versions of fight and flight. For example, the fawning, the people pleasing, these are all responses that we learn to mitigate any immediate threat. And that threat might be due to physical violence, emotional violence, or other external factors. And we learn very quickly how to behave. And often enough, that behavior is equally modeled by the people around us. Let's say in a family harm situation, often the mother models certain behaviors that the child then also sees, okay, that's how mom does it. Okay, I'll do the same. So quite right. And that is about 50%. So when you look at attachment styles, that's about 50% of the people who have got some form of not so positive attachment pattern that they then portray throughout much of their life.
Absolutely. I
So
am speaking to that, the avoidant, the anxious, and the disorganized. Yeah, that is the ones. Absolutely.
isn't it? And if you say 50% of people, that's actually half of the population. And you then wonder why there is so much strife out there, why there is so much confusion out there, because these people, me included, fear avoidance, to just say it. We get triggered. We get triggered by things that we haven't even got the faintest clue about. But yet
Mhm.
these triggers can be so powerful that they immediately change our emotional state, our physical state, and it changes the way you respond to a situation because you perceive it immediately as a threat, when in reality, that email or that serious talk with an employer or whatever it is was not meant to be personal at all. It just raised an issue, raised a problem that you immediately took on personally. My goodness. So good to talk about the background here. But now that we know that at least half of us, and probably a lot of the people who are listening and viewing here, that you are belonging in that sisterhood and brotherhood, what do you do? And maybe when we, because we say today, let's actually talk about this grief and the feeling of loss. How can that feeling manifest itself? What have you experienced yourself or seen in others?
The thing that is so constant is it's something that people bring up all the time. You hear it in everybody's language and they talk about it over and over. Like, yeah, I try to work this out with my mom and she's really not hearing me. Um, One of the examples I give in my book where I talk about where the mom is constantly critiquing her
Mm,
daughter and how she's raising her kid and how she's saying like, mom, I'm really not okay with how you're doing that when you're watching my kid. And the mom's like, oh my gosh, it's fine. This is not a problem. And it comes down to really realizing that the mom is not respecting her
mm,
daughter as a mom. And
mm,
then the daughter has to grieve the reality that she isn't getting that respect and affection she desperately needs to get from her mom to just
mm,
say, like, oh, sweetie, I'm so proud of how you're raising your son. You're doing
mm,
such a good job. I like how you're doing. She's not getting that. She's
mm,
just constantly getting, why are you doing it like this? Honey, I really wouldn't do it like this. Why is it like that?
mm,
You wouldn't behave that way if you would have listened to me. And
mm,
it's this sense of never feeling like no matter how good of a mom I am to my, kid, my mom is never going to see it.
mm,
And I'm talking to these people because they, especially when you're dealing with any parent in this situation, we've worked our whole lives to get them to love us.
mm,
We've worked forever for them to show up for us, for them to choose us, to say that we mean something, that we're
mm,
worthwhile, that they're proud of us. And I'll tell you what, I've not met a single person who has struggled with this who hasn't tried every single avenue for their parent just to see them. And having them pull a parent off of a pedestal and having them go, wow, like they might not actually ever respect me like this is one of the most painful realities to sit with. And I just love walking people through that terrain, walking through that level of, oh my gosh, that's the reality I live in.
mm, mm,
And that's when I have to understand, I have to respect the decision that they've already made about me. I just don't want to absorb it. And that would involve pain. That would involve grief and like a goodbye of, you're the mother I desperately need to love me, and you won't, or respect me, or even, see me in this way that I need. And this can work for any relationship, obviously, whether that's a spouse, a sibling, your own kids, and just how much people are willing to lose themselves to gain the love that they need that they may never get. So that's what I see. And that's what I just had a method that I was working with these people with over and over and over again. And every single one of them that allowed me to help them were able to step into that reality of their pain and make very, very different choices in their life and feel I would agree with you, a sense of healthy, secure attachment style that they were able to move through that they couldn't before because they thought the grief was too painful. And so I talk about when people make boundaries with us, how we respect it and start saying goodbye to the parts that we need and we know we may never have.
There will be no doubt situations, though, where a person has come to a point where a lot of things they feel have gone against them, and they really desperately want someone to show love, to show them the respect, to show them the positive affirmation, or give them the positive affirmations, well done. Especially those people who have a love language of listening to such words, hearing such words. It's really, really hard for those people when really everything they yearn to have, they don't have, and they're already in the darkness. To then cut that off, cut yourself off, shall I say, to decide. Decide means to cut off, actually, in its language origin.
Yep.
To decide enough is enough. That can be brutal and incredibly hard, isn't it?
Absolutely. And one of the things I loved, in the literature in my field, there's a lot of books about boundaries. Just mine focuses on the pain of them and why we won't let go or can't or think that, it's too hard. And, everybody I've ever walked through, or even friends I've talked to, they're like, because, what if it changes, or what if it's different? And, what if they come around? And it's like, but we have to respect what they're telling you today.
And I think that is exactly it. You cannot force someone to love you. You cannot force someone to respect you.
Right.
Many of us make poor decisions, and we have to accept the past for that. And even if you have got a different point of view of the decision that you have made, for someone else, the same decision that was maybe good for you was detrimental or negative. Example, a man who goes out and works his guts out to bring money home to feed his family. He sees himself as a good provider. He has worked 14 hours. But the reality that he was never there as a partner for his wife or as a father for his children, that makes him something negative in their eyes. So there is this huge discrepancy of perception. How do you bring that home to someone? How can you help someone to realize even why someone else might have a different perception of life than the one that you have?
Absolutely. And that to me is a vulnerability issue. You have, the guy who's working, 14-hour days to be there. But he works that because he loves the family. He loves you. He's trying to show up for you. And, she's working really hard, to take care of the kids and doing the household stuff and all of that. And there's vulnerability missing in that relationship. I show, as the man, I show my love to you by how much I work, and I come home and show you my love this way. And she's like, I know that you love us for how hard you work. And when you come home, I feel loved by you, whether that's by your words, right? Any of the 5 love languages,
Mm.
and that's just a vulnerability in a communication that I also think we struggle with a lot in our culture. Vulnerability seems to be very scary. I just believe that it's sad that it has to be within marriages and, ideal family dynamics, because that's
Mm.
what makes us close.
But all that, of course, all this insight, this emotional intelligence doesn't come naturally to us, certainly not in the way we have been brought up. Certainly, I mean, born in 66, there was no emotional vulnerability being modeled to me. I can tell you that. There was a lot of
Right.
bullshit modeled to me. Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm in
and
that group. Yeah.
so we actually have to realize that there is a lot that we have to learn about ourselves. And only once we have gone typically through trauma that we
Mm-hmm.
actually allow ourselves the time to grow to make the insights, gain the insights that allow us to show up in a better way. And maybe that's the curse for us because we have to do the wrong things first and suffer the consequences, and only then to try to make amends and try to go out there and be a better version of ourselves.
Yeah, I would say though that in order to get to emotional intelligence, you have to be a person who's skilled at grieving. People who are skilled at grieving
Mm,
develop a lot of emotional intelligence because they're able to say goodbye to things that no
mm,
longer deplete their sense of self.
mm,
And grieving is a skill.
mm,
Learning how to attach the feeling you get after a good cry, the like the huge relief after like that huge sobbing cry that
mm,
you do, that is what I would encourage people to attach grief to,
mm,
because your brain and the way somebody speaks, the way
mm,
somebody looks at you, the way somebody behaves is
mm,
vastly different after they've had a really intense cry,
mm,
because that data is getting refiled in the brain in a totally different area. And they're able to look at a situation and go, yeah, that's the case. And it's amazing. Any
mm,
single person I've ever helped with that massive cry, they're making different decisions. Their language is totally different.
mm,
It's incredible. And for us being afraid to say goodbye, I think is what's really killing our sense of connecting well.
mm,
And, that's what I'm really hoping to show people of how much energy you save and how different your decisions are and how you actually can get the life that you've designed
mm,
if you allow yourself to heal these things, because we do have the ability to not allow ourselves to heal these things. And when we don't, it, causes issues and disconnection from everyone
mm,
else in our lives. And my proposal, if you will, is that it doesn't have to, but it doesn't have to if we let ourselves grieve really well.
mm,
And we allow ourselves to be like, you know what? I just need to cry and I need to be a mess. And I know I'm going to feel better afterwards. I just never met anybody who's like, you know what? I regret grieving that thing. Shouldn't have grieved that. Like, I've never really heard that ever. And it's amazing to me. We're all just like, no, if I start crying, like I won't stop. And I'm like, wait. Have you ever met anybody? Have you ever met anybody who's never stopped crying? Because I've never met anybody who's just like their whole lives are crying. And of course, that's different when you're dealing with, pathological depression, of course. But when we're
mm,
dealing with loss and grief,
mm.
um, it has a flow that it moves through. And allowing that healing to do its job, it really does change our perspective of ourselves in our relationships in the world.
I love it. You're absolutely right. So, how do we grieve? I mean, is grieving in its own right, if we actually accept that it is such a often a taboo to talk about, to experience it, bloody hell, experience a negative emotion. We are conditioned to
Mhm.
immediately run away from negative emotions. You hurt yourself as a child, well, someone will push some sugar in your mouth immediately. Here, have a cookie. You go
Mhm.
to the doctor and you get an immunization. Here, have a lolly. Okay, let me see. Pain, sugar. Good. That's obviously the way I'm supposed to grieve. Okay, bring on. Yeah, what was that? So many films that the name's not now don't come to my mind, where the classic grief response to a breakup in a relationship is a 5 kilogram tub of ice cream, the Bridget Jones diary, how do we grieve? Or what are sort of, are there the stages of grief? Or is that meanwhile completely blown out of the water?
So I think stages of grief are they're pretty valid. I mean, Kubler-Ross did a great job with
Hmm.
her with that. And I don't think it matters which one you pick first, or like how you organically grieve. I think we're all very different in how we organically grieve.
Hmm.
I'm definitely someone who, I start in denial for a while. It's
Hmm.
often like the shock phase where I'm super shocked, and then I cry, and then I get really mad, and then I cry again and get mad again, and then I'm shocked for a minute, and I go back, you go in and out of them, just
Well, the
like,
emotional roller coaster. I mean, that's
well, you're
exactly it.
supposed to. Yeah. But just like knowing the map of how you grieve is one of the most beneficial things you can know about yourself.
Hmm.
And so the how you grieve is so important to learn. I very much encourage people to learn their map of grief, because once you learn your map, you understand how you function when you're not okay. And being able to articulate that to people on, here's how I'm not okay, and
Hmm.
here's the stage I'm at, is one of the ways I would argue that we break that cycle of that encouraging emotional immaturity, right? Don't deal with your emotions, don't process them, don't get vulnerable.
Hmm.
And now I've taught you very well how to never connect to anybody. That is just a terrible gifting. I would be terrified as a parent to think that that would be something you would gift your own kiddos. And so showing and modeling, no, this is how it looks. This is how it works. And, I love you and I support you, and I'm going to show up for you no matter what stage you're in,
Hmm.
because that's connecting. That's love. It's that elective choice to show up when somebody else won't, or you need them to, and someone else might be in a position to. But I agree with you. It takes a certain amount of emotional maturity to do that. So
Hmm.
knowing this about yourself and knowing how you grieve even the little things is
Hmm.
a really valuable tool to connecting well in life. And I would hate people to feel stunted by their ability to absorb the love they know they need when they can.
Oh, that's beautifully said. When they can, but then also realize that there are moments when you can't because someone else has set a boundary, rightly or wrongly so, that now does not provide you with your deepest inner needs, the
Yep.
love, the feeling connected, the feeling supported. And that's so hard, that's so difficult to have that insight at any one time because ultimately, if you look at it, there's this beautiful Zen-like state where we are completely in flow and everything is all right. Yeah, about that. I mean, not many of us are there um, uh, often enough or ever. So Zen and flow here, then is the kind of stress. That's probably where most of us are sitting most of the time. Now you will respond differently down there to your needs not being met compared with when you're under stress. Leave alone if I crank up the stress so much that it becomes distress. Well, then your behavior and your perceptions and your blinkeredness will be so extreme that you can't even see what kind of core beliefs are running your behavior. You can't see how you are triggered and how your responses of fight or typically fight then rather than flight are so powerful. And that's so hard. Hmm.
It is. And I would say there's an other side to grief that I think we're missing a lot. Um, because when you say goodbye to the fact that you have put yourself in such a stressful state to get this affection and love, and when you start to say goodbye to that part of yourself that you can't take with you anymore, there's a sense of relief. But there's
There is.
also this sense of like, I am worth it to some people. And I didn't even get a chance to realize that until
Hmm.
I grieved this. And people really don't understand how important they are or how valuable they are. when they're not hyper focused on trying to make someone else love them. And you can connect deeper with people who are investing in you and who are trying with you and do tell you that you're worth it, because you can't hear it when you're all at, what you were saying with those levels and you're all stressed out. Like, you can't hear that. You can't absorb that information. But we live in these states. Like, we live there and just going like, this is our belief system. This is our reality. This is how we function. And I mean, if my own parents don't even love me, who will? Right? We get so stuck here. And it's devastating to think that, we know we may never be able to get their love, but there are people that do want to love us, whether that's a spouse or our own children, or heck, even our cat. Mine doesn't. I put that in my book. They all favor my husband, but like, that we aren't able to see it. And we lose out on the parts of ourselves where we get to invest, not only in who we know we can be, but in the relationships we know really value us. And we're unable to see that when we're so focused in that state. And I really want to help people find that freedom, because to be bounded that way emotionally is, it's an anchor. It'll pull you down.
Oh, it is, but it's so hard to get out of that mindset, that overwhelm. It's like a tsunami, an ongoing flood of emotions, and basically reinforcing themselves. And the reality is, we have got 80,000 thoughts a day, of which about 80% are negative. If your brain now has this endless loop of providing you the same information again and again and again, the refocus, the kind of reliving through those hard times, refeeling the negative emotions and coming again and again. That's one of the hallmarks of PTSD. And instead of now, or PTSI, as we should call it, or different symptom complexes nowadays, the reality is, we need to find ways to step outside of our head and have kind of an out-of-body experience, and start questioning, cross-examining the feelings and the thoughts that are running through our head.
I have a way to do that.
Shoot.
If you could, it's frankly the miracle question in a sense of, if you could wake up and you didn't have to keep trying. You woke up one day and you stopped trying. And you were just loved for exactly who you are. And you knew that you were exactly where you were supposed to be. And you knew that this was exactly right. You're not supposed to be anybody more or anybody less. You are supposed to be exactly where you are right now. What would that emotion, what is your body feeling? And where are you in this? What would that day look like? What would your decisions look like? And all I ever ask people is give themselves a chance to imagine the feeling. You don't have to believe it today, but we all have a wonderful imagination. I don't care if you put a unicorn in there. I don't care if you put pixie dust. You put anything you want in that imagination, okay? But just, what if we did that one day and if you can feel it, that's how we pull ourselves out. It's that imagination piece of us that goes, wow, I don't have to try. Like, I'm just already loved. What is that even like? What do I do with that? And this is where just the idea, just the thought, will allow yourself to feel it, even if it's not real today. But it means that it's possible. If you could get yourself there just now with me and you could feel it, it means there's a way there. And the way we can get there and truly believe that about ourselves is to say goodbye to anything that doesn't allow us to be in that state. And It's hard. I'm not going to lie. It is very painful. It is painful to realize that most of us don't think that way. We
Mm.
don't wake up going, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Like, I
Mm.
really like this life I worked for. I'm really proud of myself. I worked really hard to get here. We aren't thinking that way. I mean, maybe when we were little at some point, we might have, but when was the last time we felt that?
Mm.
And I would argue that we can't until we grieve the things that are holding us back from failing that. And some people, the answer is like, man, I would stop trying to get my spouse to love me. I would stop trying to get my parents to believe me. I would stop trying to get my boss to see I'm good enough. I would just know that I am because it's my character trait. Like it's who I am. Like I know I'm a trustworthy person. I know I'm a loving person. I know that I'm a compassionate person. I already know that. I shouldn't be proving that all the time.
Mm.
And so,
I love
yeah.
I love your focus there on the perfect day. And the perfect day already, I hear in on our audience eyes rolling. If there is a sound for that, I hear it because that is bullshit. The perfect day.
Yes.
Look at my life. Here I am working hard because I have to. I don't have the choice. I have to because I'm struggling to make ends meet.
Mhm.
I'm coming home to a very stressed wife, to a very stressed family. My teenagers are playing up, my and so on and so on. Now, these are
Mhm.
realities for these people. So, how
Absolutely.
can we possibly consider a relaxed day, the perfect day, where I wake up, have a little massage, have a little
Well, I'm
some
definitely not
chef.
implying that because I don't find that to be very realistic, but it's more of a sense of like, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, not
Hmm,
like this is my ideal perfect day. I
hmm,
mean, because in yours, that specific situation, I would say, wait, so you're telling me you don't know anybody who really likes their job? Like, I'm
hmm,
really glad to be going to work today. Like,
hmm.
or I really am excited to see that client, or I'm really glad that I get to do this. You're saying nobody's ever had that? Because I definitely know people who feel that way. I
Yeah.
know people who are like, actually, I'm really glad to go today. I mean, is that not like a possibility? Is that just like not for you? Is it just because you've decided that? Like,
Nice,
of
nice.
course it's a possibility, you know. I mean, don't get me wrong, who doesn't want like an amazing spa day? That sounds great, but like but are you where you're like, you know what? I've worked really hard and today is like a day where I get to do those things and not feel guilty because I've earned it, right? I earned to get to this spot. And I believe that that shows up in our behaviors, but it's really true emotionally, right? Like
Hmm,
I've grieved really well. And so I actually really like my relationships. I've worked super hard for my relationships. I've really earned them. And I feel like I'm, working at it. And
nice.
I'm not on the side of deserve. I think people earn things that we don't deserve it. We work for them, right? We work for our degrees. We work for our
Yeah.
intelligence. We work for our money. We work for it. We earn it.
I think that's a really, really good point you're making. Many of us think we deserve it because of I am the mother. I have given you birth. So therefore
Mm.
I deserve your love. Yeah, well, exactly.
Ugh.
Yeah, about that. Um, Having said that, equally, many of us do go the extra mile, which is then not acknowledged, which is not even seen, which is taken for granted. So where do you draw a healthy line there? Where do you bring in the appropriate amount of introspection, the appropriate amount of critical view, the kind of doing a moral inventory to say, okay, I am actually doing a hell of a lot, and I have invested a lot in me so that I'm the right person versus oh you're just a narcissistic selfish little git.
Sure. Give me the context. Am I talking to a spouse? Who are we talking to? Are we talking to a
Take any relationship, take
Okay, so if it's like the woman in that situation where
hmm,
she's like, I feel like you're not acknowledging like all the work that I do, it would be like that's more of a hey babe, I just really feel like you haven't noticed all of the stuff that I've been doing
hmm,
lately.
hmm,
And I just would love for you to just notice it a little bit more, I think it would mean more to me than you realize. That you just noticed that I was able to like cook 5 times this week for everybody,
Mm,
or that you notice that you don't have to worry about your laundry right now.
mm.
And it means a lot to me that you notice it.
But that is emotional insight. For that person needs to actually realize what has triggered them, what is going on. So there's a whole lot of things that have to occur before such a sensible response and emotionally controlled response is coming out. I venture to say that there are not so many people out there who are able to do that mental and emotional acrobatics to come to that point and deliver their their own feelings so eloquently.
See, I might disagree with you here on this, only because I think people really are capable. It just depends on where their values are.
Ah.
I have worked with people who are exactly like that. They're like, I'm not kidding. I've heard this thousands of times. It's actually why I wrote the book, because I kept hearing it over. I don't think I'll ever get there. There's no way I'll ever have a life like that. You're lying to me. I'm never going to have that. And then, like, working with them for like a year, they're like, and I go, I just want you to realize you've reached every single goal you swore to me that we would never go. And they go, oh, you're right. I can't believe it. I didn't even think about that. I'm so glad you said that. I've just been like kind of focusing on what's going on. And you're right. How did that happen? Like, it's amazing to me because, like, yes, you can. You are able to. You just have to really value and want it. And if you do, you are going to know how to grieve well. You're going to know, like, oh, wow, that's actually really devastating for me to realize, like, they don't choose me anymore, or they don't choose me in this way. And you can even ask them, like, hey, I'm noticing, like, you never appreciate me. Is this because you actually don't? I'm just curious because in my world, it seems like you actually don't. And I want to make sure I'm handling that right, because if you are, I'm not seeing it, and being able to have those hard conversations. Because if they don't actually appreciate all your hard work, you have to respect that, right? That's a decision they've already made
Yeah,
about you.
yeah.
And it's something we want to be like, yeah, I have to make decisions for myself if that's the case, you know? Um, so yeah, I mean, it's not magic, and anything that means something to you has to take work. I
Mm,
mean, even the most gifted people
mm.
hit a point where they have to work at a thing.
You're so right. And I think you have to realize that, yes, you're working again hard, and you might even have to work harder than you have been previously, but this time it is for you, for yourself. It is the way you nurture yourself and assure your healthy emotional future that you're working now for. Yes, it is hard to accept boundaries of others. Yes, it is hard to accept the negative emotions of loss, of grief, and all the flow-on effects like anger and frustration and hopelessness. All these kind of states are there, and none of them are pretty, but they all allow us to grow. And I think that is the biggest thing, for a man to really conquer his fear and to go through. You are a different man on the other side, and the same. And I say man just because I am a man. For
Yeah,
any human out there,
absolutely.
exactly. So that, and we have got the privilege to do so.
Yeah. My question to you though is, what if you're worth the work?
Exactly.
What if you're worth all that work
Hmm.
for that emotional labor?
The problem is many of our core beliefs are exactly that. I'm not worthy. I am I'm not lovable. I am not, all these crazy
Oh
core
yeah, no,
beliefs.
I'm with
Ah,
you on those. Yeah. I mean, those are very real, and those are things that do pop up. But there has to come a point where I think my favorite phrase in this that really did a lot of healing for me. It's really blunt and direct, but it's my favorite thing. It's nobody's coming. Get up. And the thing
I love
is,
it. I love
if
it.
you don't get up emotionally,
Yeah.
no one's coming.
Mm.
So you have to believe that you are worth this. You have to believe that you are worth the fight, because you are going to be able to have more fulfilling and vulnerable relationships than you ever had once you've decided that you're the one who's showing up for you.
Mm.
And that pain, there's so much pain in that. And that's what I like love about holding people's hand through that hell, is just that's what it is. It's this terrain of just grief of, wow, like no one, I have to do this. And that is the birth of emotional maturity.
Yep. 100% agreed. Oh, I so bloody well needed to hear that today. Nobody's coming. Get up. And it's something that I probably will engrave on my fridge. Scratch it in. Because ultimately that is such a raw truth. Um, and once you find the power that comes from that truth, once you actually let the truth settle in, it starts something, because your body, your mind, your whole energy being wants to survive. That's deeply, deeply ingrained in us. Even if in
Abandonment. Yep.
the darkest hour, you still want to survive. You still want to get away from the pain towards the joy. These are the fundamental principles that are in deep inside of you. But sometimes they need to be harnessed. They need to be, you need to put petrol or kerosene on the fire and
Mhm.
really get that sparking up. And that is exactly what is waiting for us if we just let it happen.
Yeah.
It is okay to grieve. You need to grieve. And I think if there's one thing
We're
that
wired
people,
for it.
well, exactly, you need to. But there's a time for a pity party, and there's a time for letting go, and there's a time for you absolutely losing it. And I congratulate you for it, because that is really that you're living your emotion, that you're feeling your emotion, an emotion that you otherwise would normally have run away from. So the sheer fact that you are now crying your eyes out, I love you guys for it. I send you the hugest hug, whoever you are, because that is the start of you showing up for yourself. And now you can then accept this emotion, investigate it, see where it came from, see the release that you get after it. And now what's the next step? So maybe, and just maybe, there is a person out there who has actually, who we have triggered hugely, and who's just right about has run out of tissues to and is accepting and listening and says, okay, I've cried. Now what? What would you tell that person?
Oh, I want to know their story.
Oh,
I'm
true.
I have to know what we're grieving and who we're grieving or what the situation is, because like I that's like my bread and butter. I just the one-on-one, like your heart and soul, I'm ready. Like yeah, what yes, you have. It just I need give me an example.
Um, for example, the man who has lost his job, the
Okay.
man who has been made redundant. He is in his 50s, late 50s, has defined himself as a worker. Or it could be a younger man who has been a top athlete and has now an injury that's forever taken him out, or a special forces man who has defined himself by being a soldier and now is so shot up, or a victim of an IED, that everything he was is gone in
Yeah.
his eyes.
Hmm. Yeah. So I would first start, especially one of the things I'm was always known as like neuroinformed. So I definitely always want to start people off with what your brain does when it's grieving and how the brain functions. And so knowing that when you grieve and you hit that reflexive like hit, like the data is moving, and it allows a perspective that you didn't have before that grief process. So if you move through that grief process and you're like, okay, I'm here, now what? that's the best question you can possibly ask yourself, because you've now given yourself opportunities that you were not saying before you started crying. And now you're going, what's next? And that is the evidence that your grief is working, because look at all the options. Yes, what's next? When was the last time you ever asked yourself, what are my options now? That is an area where you get to actually try things that you never would have done before. You go, you know, I'm allowed to be wrong about this, right? I'm allowed to try this thing. And I'm allowed to, you know, maybe that wasn't for me. You know what? I'm going to try this other thing. Like, when was the last time you got to play with who you want to be or what you want in your life? Or what a great question to say, now what? When was the last time you got to say that? I mean, the last time I said that was at recess when I was a kid. You know, like, oh, I was done playing that game with that friend. Now what do I get to do? You know, like, what a great question. And I think we're missing that. When was the last time you asked that? It opens your entire world up.
Beautiful.
That you didn't get to say before you let yourself cry. And then that's where I would ask the question, yeah, now what? What would it mean to wake up and go, wow, I actually really liked I did that today? Or I'm really proud of myself. That was hard work and I did it. Like, what would that look like? I love that. Now what? Bring me with you. Where are we going?
Excellent. And it's so, therefore, you have already completely rephrased it or looked at it in a complete different light. Same question. Well, you know, okay, I've cried. Now what? To now what? A very different style of inquiry. You have got the opportunity, and I think that's the key thing that so many of us don't realize. We have the opportunity to live with intention. We have the gift of choice every single second, but we don't take it. We just are on our hamster wheel and keep going. And because we're not so far outside of our comfort zone, that we're thinking, well, okay, it's not so nice. I'm under all this stress, but at least, you know, it's a devil I know. And you keep going in the same environment, toxic. And that might be a relationship, that might be work, that might be your own body riddled with inflammation and poor choices as far as your health is concerned. But it's not bad enough that you just have to make a decision. And I think that's the gift of trauma. That's the gift of major changes happening in your life, often at a time when they are least convenient. And, well, that's probably how you define trauma. But here you're pushed outside of your comfort zone to such a degree that you have to change, that you have to adapt. But this is a gift. This is a gift for you to be a different human thereafter. And I think if we just accept that as a gift, we can then extrapolate and actually say, well, are there other gifts? Well, yes, right now. Right now, you've made the choice to listen to us. And that's so beautiful.
See, and I would reframe that.
Go for it.
It's not a gift. You earned it. You cried your eyes out. You worked hard at it. You said goodbye. You were living in a state where you weren't able to do it until this point, and now you've earned the ability to see this in a way that you couldn't do this. And I'm weird. I'm not on the side that like trauma gifts are gifts. Like for those of us who have so much trauma, like complex trauma is just like, oh, that's I love my soul is in, you know, that kind of a thing. And any of us would have traded these gifts for people just to love us and show up for us.
Touche.
You know, like it's, you know, we've earned the ability to say goodbye to things we've desperately needed. And now we know how. That's something we've earned. That's something we've worked for. That's something I would encourage every person to fight for. And to realize that you are worth this fight. This battle is hard as hell. This battle is painful. This battle is difficult. But to decide today that you're not worth it is the detriment to everybody else who loves you and is waiting to love you in your future. And we can't do that to ourselves anymore. We can't do this because we don't get to play. We don't get to enjoy our lives. We don't get to do the things that maybe we were called to do or asked to do that really do a lot for other people. And so this has to look different. This has to be different because the fulfilling life is there. I just want to give you the map to it. I want to help you see it.
And even if you're in the darkest moment, to listen to someone who actually says with such conviction and with such a background of complex trauma that there is hope and that there is help, and the way you show up right now, that is modeling that is proving to you that even if you don't believe the words, you probably will believe the person, because this person is clearly showing up for themselves in a way that you probably can't at the moment, that you have not yet learned how to do. I think that is the beautiful thing. That's where we have got the power of changing the world, by doing the hard work on ourselves and learning about boundaries, learning about accepting the boundaries, however hard that is, learning about grief and accepting that there is a loss and a grief process that we're going through for so many things in our lives. Probably many of us, or most of us, will have not realized that this is what is actually happening. This is what is occurring. We only felt the anger and tried to get rid of it and tried to run away from it. We only felt the sadness without even realizing what was going on. Now we can name it, and then maybe we can also tame it, by us being more aware of our emotions. That is the powerful first step, accepting them and not feeling bad for them.
Yeah,
you shouldn't.
that's right.
Don't feel ashamed or don't feel guilty that you're crying. The crying is just only a manifestation of your sadness, of your of a low energy state, of, call it depression if you want to use the clinical terms. It's only a reflection of right now one neurochemical wave that is running through you, that will change. And talking like us today is so powerful, to let you see how you can be instrumental to start this change.
I mean, I really hope so. And I would even say, like, when it comes to grief or feeling guilty around grief, that I hate it when people feel bad about grieving. It's so odd to me, because like a scab or like a broken leg, we don't like
Mm.
feel bad that we have it. Our body just like does it because it's how it heals.
Yeah,
And grief, that's exactly what grief is. Like we
yeah.
don't, it's the only healing like thing we have that we seem to have shame around, which is so odd to me, because it's like, you know, to feel shameful for healing. I don't know. That has always registered to me very oddly, because I'm like, how do you feel shame for heal? What a strange way to have that in your head.
You're so right.
Um, and I I really think that, people don't realize what they're capable of, but it takes this pain to get there.
Mm.
And I don't know, I think it's worth it for me to know that people realize that this is really hard. But I mean, maybe because they're getting sound bites, of course, on a podcast, but anybody that's ever done the work, I've never heard anybody regret it. Like nobody go, I really shouldn't have said goodbye to them not choosing me anymore. I was a terrible decision. Like, I've just never heard that. So, um, I want to encourage anybody that healing is exactly right. That's how it's supposed to be. That's what our body does to move
Mm.
through it. And
Mm.
it will feel very differently as you allow yourself to embrace it. And,
Mm.
sometimes it takes somebody else to tell us it, or, we might need coaching, somebody to walk
Mm.
us through and hold our hand, or maybe, you don't want to do any of that. And that's why I wrote the book. So.
And you're so right. Laurie, you're an amazing woman. Tell us more about your book. Where can people find you? Where can people find the book?
It's on Amazon.
Mhm.
It's called Boundaries, Grieving the Living.
Perfect. Grieving the Living. What a title, isn't it?
It's on Amazon.
Mm,
And yeah, I'm on Instagram and
mm,
TikTok.
mm.
I just got a TikTok. I'm deciding how I feel about it.
Yeah. Guys, look down there into the description of the YouTube video and of the podcast because all of Laura's information is down there. The links are down there. Guys, check her out. I mean, this has been an amazing interview, and I'm incredibly grateful to you. There were many insights I had today, and many reinforcements I needed. Intriguingly, it's only over the last maybe 4 days, 5 days, now that I have quotation mark turned the corner, that I've accepted the boundaries that others have set, and that I'm allowing myself to move on. So therefore, it's spooky that the universe has aligned us to do this interview, and you reinforcing and supporting me without you knowing. It's just, I love it. But it's both of us are here showing up for ourselves. We both have been very raw. We both have been very authentic in our stories, and we both share our true self. We have taken our masks off and being honest. And I think that is the biggest thing you can achieve to get this kind of connection. And you will be amazed once you start to do that more out there, guys. Have meaningful discussions. Live with intention. Speak honestly about your needs. And for that, you need to reflect a little bit. What are my needs actually? How do I really want to be loved, etc.? What are your boundaries? So there's a whole range of questions, and more importantly, the answers and solutions that are waiting for you to discover that will make you a different person. And suddenly those things that worried you so much, let that be the anger over or the grief, all those things, will suddenly pale and will move into the past because you're becoming a better human. You're becoming a different human who's focusing on the future, on now. And when I say future, not in the sense of anxiety and worry and, oh my God, catastrophizing, but rather, what can I do right now to lay a strong foundation so that I can weather the storms that no doubt will wait for me in the future? You can't just think positive and think there will be no more trauma. And only because I'm now so happy, it's going to be all fine. And there's going to be unicorns and rainbows coming out of their ass. No, this will
Nailed
not
it.
happen.
Nailed it.
Laura, you're an amazing woman. Thank you so much. You were gorgeous.
Thank you so much for having me. It's
Yes.
great to have these conversations, and I love it.
Cool. And you guys out there, look after yourself and live with intention. Bye.
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up. Turn around.